Here's a picture of an area of boreal forest. You see these are mostly conifers, cone-bearing trees, a lot of spruces and firs in these habitats, for example. Temperate rainforests. So, like the boreal forest, these are rich in conifers, evergreen, but different kinds. These are somewhat warmer areas and much wetter. Again, we see them northwestern North America, southwestern South America, northwestern Europe, southeastern Australia, New Zealand. We get some places like that. So, good deal of precipitation. Winters are relatively mild. Summer's cool as well. I remember seeing a story about someone from Midwest moved out to Seattle in the fall, enthusiastically wrote to friends back there, move on out here, there's no winter. And then 6 months later, wrote again, you might as well stay, there's no summer either. Somewhat cool and wet all year round. All that water. Trees tend to like it, grow very well, so we have often very tall, big evergreen trees, and also plenty of water. That's good for stuff growing up on the branches. So we see a lot of epiphytes, mosses and lichens, and smaller plants growing on top of things there. We have a variety of animals, different sorts. The herbivores, predators, birds, trees, big trees, lots of different places to nest. So you get a good variety there. Doesn't get too cold to be a problem for the reptiles and amphibians. You have very few reptiles and amphibians that are making it into boreal forest area, or hardly any making it to the tundra. But in the more temperate areas, we have better conditions for them. Again, you also can get these on mountains as well. We do have subtropical forests, some of which are rainforests, and also the deciduous temperate forests. So depending if we get to an area that's not quite as rainy, we may start to see more deciduous forest. And if we're getting into warmer climates, we can start to see the subtropical rainforest areas as well. Here's a picture, and you see lots and lots of plants around the ground and loads of epiphytes. It's hard to see the branches. There's so much stuff growing on the trees there. Temperate deciduous forests. That should be relatively familiar. That's the natural vegetation around here in the southeastern U.S. Now, of course, we've cut down a lot of it. It's not all forest anymore, but we still have forest patches. Most of them actually, still isn't quite the word, they're grown back after having been cut down. But summers, fairly hot. Winters, fairly cool. Decent amount of rain. We're not particularly hard up for rain, but it's not nearly as soggy as in the rainforest areas. With the good plant growth, we tend to have fairly rich topsoil in these areas. But below that, it's warm and wet enough. There's plenty of chemical weathering going on, washing away minerals, and so we can have clay, not so rich soil underneath. Clay is not particularly underneath. It's basically what you get right out there on the quad at the surface. Where's that topsoil? Eroded away. Intensive agriculture, not very good land use practices. It wasn't until really early 1900s that people started to realize much about how easily soil erodes away and becomes a problem. And one of the kind of ground zero worst case areas for the soil erosion was right around here. So that good old clay, red clay dirt that we associate so much with the Piedmont in the southeast is what's left behind after all the farming used up or let wash away the good stuff on top. Our trees tend to be flowering plants that lose their leaves in the fall. Good variety of species present, although again, big human impact in a lot of these areas. So a lot of the larger species have been eliminated from many parts of this. Good diversity of smaller things. Again, temperate. People tend to like that. And large human population, there's appreciable declines in a number of the native species. And you get that some in all habitats. People are impacting everywhere. Here's an example of some temperate deciduous forests in the fall. So we're starting to see the leaves turning colors, getting ready to fall off as the plant is taking up the chlorophyll to have the nutrients again when it grows new leaves in the spring. Temperate grasslands. Like all of these, there are a variety of exact styles. We have areas that with somewhat more rainfall and taller grasses. So we have the tall grass prairie, used to be widespread across the Midwest, but very much turned into farmland. And so now remnant tall grass is very rare. And then the short grass, drier, so not as great for your farm, and there's somewhat more of that left, but still significantly impacted. Drier, less water around, that tends to mean more extreme temperature. So summers tend to be quite hot and winters quite cold. Also drier, we're going to see more influence of fire here than in the ones we've talked about before. Soils, rich soils develop under the native grassland over time, but again, intensive farming, poor land use practices can lead to loss of that, like with the Dust Bowl. Grasslands typically naturally have a variety of large grazing animals. Grass, well, you got a lot of room to run through. You don't have to worry about crashing into a tree, so you can have a relatively big animal there. But also, you can't hide behind trees that aren't there either. And so, being big, strong, fast running is typically a good defense for an herbivore in these areas. For smaller things, those can be hiding down the grass, but large ones not as much so. Again, human impact, a number of the large grazers are no longer present that were around historically or prehistorically. Here's an example. In central US, we have buffalo, one living species still. There were several more in Ice Age, probably overhunting by humans that took those others out. No trees. Chaparral tends to be associated with hilly areas, temperate. Mediterranean region, well known for this, but we see it in a number of other parts of the world. Winters, fairly mild, doesn't get too cold. And characteristically, most of the rainfall occurs during that winter, and hardly any rain in the summer. This is something you see, for example, in reading the Bible, particularly comes up in the Old Testament, where we talk about the importance of rain, reference to the early and late rains. Well, you've got rain in the winter into the spring, and then basically no rain until the fall. So the last spring rain and the first fall rain are very, very important for your crops to survive. And so paying attention to that, on the one hand, that we had opportunity for them to trust God, but there was the temptation to see if Baal could do something about the rain also. Soil is characteristically relatively thin with the dry conditions. You don't have as much water around to help with the chemical breakdown of rock, and you have fewer plants contributing over the time with the dead leaves and things like that. Like the grasslands, characteristically, fire is a significant part of the natural environment, and so you tend to have patches of more bush-type plants that are able to survive a fire going past. You have some mid-sized mammals, not as many big ones typically, a variety of small ones. Various birds can handle those conditions. Reptiles, it's relatively warm. They don't mind things being too dry, typically, so you get good variety there. Here's an example of chaparral.